On the 18th of March 1975, MASH would air its season 3 finale, wherein a death would occur that would change TV and sitcoms forever. Now, death on TV, while somewhat taboo, did happen beforehand, and was usually as a result of actors leaving the show. The first time it actually happened on the Danny Thomas Show, formerly known as Make Room for Daddy, which followed Danny Williams, a nightclub singer and comedian, about his life and trying to balance his soul business ideals and aspirations, and of course his family. Now in the show, Danny had his loving wife, Margaret, played by Jean Hagen, who was nominated 3 times for an Emmy for her role as Margaret. She grew tired of the role, and would frequently clash with Danny, so much so they grew to hate each other, which there are different reports as to what. Some say that Danny's ego was damaged due to Hagen being seen as the bigger draw. Others just say that she didn't really like her character, which of course due to the time period was very sexist. And when she left, comments felt that the show wouldn't last, thus a resentment against her, and thus they decided to, controversially, kill her character off screen, which was decided due to divorce at the time being unacceptable for viewers at home, and thus they killed her off, the first person to die in a TV sitcom ever.
Kids. What's there to talk about? I've done everything I can do, but with no mother in the house to balance things, children get out of hand.
Thus, the death that happens in MASH isn't unprecedented per se. However, like MASH itself, it was a needle mover, and impacted sitcoms and TV as a medium, which I talked about in my MASH video on the series finale, which to this day is the most watched TV episode in American history. Death in MASH wasn't necessarily a new concept, as in several episodes it was brought up or even seen on screen. For example, the episode Sometimes You Hear the Bullet from season 1 episode 17, in which Hawkeye, played by Alan Alda, who would later become the show's main protagonist, which annoyed some cast members, which I'll get to later, reconnects with an old friend who is writing a book about his war experiences titled You Never Hear the Bullet. However, in a shocking twist, we find out he's been shot, in which he says to Hawkeye he heard the bullet, and you see the immediate change in Hawkeye's demeanour and eyes. Whilst he still jokes, it is him trying to cope with his friend just being shot. However, he is stopped by Henry, the chief surgeon, saying to him,
"Pierce, go help McIntyre."
And thus, the first time on the show, we see the surgeons unable to save someone, and the first time we see someone really affected by death on the show. And despite the network, CBS, discouraging them from tackling controversial subjects, due to the episode's success, it was nominated for a Writers Guild Award, and it allowed for more creative freedom from MASH, and many cast members like Alda and Larry Linville, who plays Flank Browns, were proud of the episode. Now, the season 3 finale, however, took death to a whole nother level, wherein they killed off a main character. Now, McLean Stevenson, who played Henry Blake, grew ever more frustrated and basically jealous of Alan Alda, due to Alda getting a lot of the limelight, which he wasn't the only actor, as Wayne Rogers, who also left the show, due to being Alda's sidekick. However, the issue was more due to the studio and the writers, rather than Alda himself. Stevenson saying to Loretta Swit, who played Margaret Houlihan, that, quote, "I know I will not be in anything as good as this show, but I have to leave and be number one," end quote. Which brings us to the finale, in which Henry Blake received his orders to be able to return back home to America, which of course he is ecstatic by the news. As a few episodes earlier, we get to see footage of his family back home, a recurring idea throughout the show, and illustrates how much, understandably, Henry misses his family, and even gets the chance to call them in the finale, though for a limited time period.
Honest, for good. Yeah, the orders just came through this morning. I ought to be coming through the front door in about 3 days.
And we see him, each member of the MASH reacts to his departure. Radar takes it the hardest, as Henry is like a father figure to Radar, given Radar's young age and the time spent together. Due to Radar being the company clerk, and Blake relying heavily on Radar. Due to Blake, whilst being a competent surgeon, he has a lack of leadership skills, which is due to his lack of military experience. And they give themselves gifts in order to remember each other. Frank and Houlihan are loving it. Frank believes that he will be put as the permanent new leader of the 4077, which excites both Frank due to his pro-American, pro-military viewpoint on life, and his need to exert control over people, and Margaret due to her loving Frank, but also due to her attraction to higher-up army generals. Within the show's earlier seasons, a running gag is that all the army generals have been romantically entangled in some way with her, thus resulting in her nickname. Despite Hawkeye and Trapper being desperate to leave the war, they are happy for their friend, so they take him out for drinks the night before his departure and get him a brand new suit. Henry says goodbye to the cast, from playing out a character who becomes a permanent member of the cast in season 3, with him being so desperate to escape the army, who wears dresses in order to get a psychological discharge, who wears a fitting over-the-top dress, which Henry gets. Of course, Hawkeye and Trapper tell him okay, bless him, and Hawkeye and Trapper whisper to Henry that he should go up and give Margaret a kiss, something which would become a sort of motif for characters leaving the show. His goodbye walk to the chopper is unfortunately interrupted by incoming patients, and thus they must rush to get ready and help Sid. But before Henry leaves, he spots a visibly tearful Radar who salutes him, but Henry salutes back and gives Radar a massive. The show then cuts to the OR, aka the operating room, in which we see Radar coming in without any gear, which Hawkeye makes a quip about due to Radar holding some sort of papers. However, the visibly shaking, depressed Radar delivers one of the most shocking lines in TV history, especially at the time and for a sitcom.
Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. It spun in. There were no survivors.
Which was shot in a tragic but brilliant one take in which we see the reaction from the actors, which involves only their eyes, thus more difficult to act, however they nail it. And the tragedy is only added to by them not having any time to really process or grieve, thus going straight back to operating on the injured soldiers. Now this resulted in fan backlash, with thousands of fan letters being sent in. One of the show's producers and directors, Gene Reynolds, even received an angry call from a New York viewer stating, quote, "I don't know why he did it. It was not necessary. It's just a little comedy show. He did not have to do this." I said, "What are you talking about? He did not have to kill Henry Blake." I say, "Who's calling?" She says, "It's so-and-so. I'm in New York City." New York City was 9:30 and she'd seen the show. He says, "You made a big mistake. It was a rotten thing to do. We're all crying here. You've upset everybody." The network and cast members would receive over 1,000 letters from fans at their disappointment about Henry's, and CBS even tried to edit out the ending when re-airing the episode. And the cast members didn't even know about Henry's death and was the final scene they shot in order for them to get a genuine reaction out of the actors. As they believe, which is probably true, had they known Henry would die the whole time, they would have indirectly changed their performance for the worse. Now this had a lot of different reactions from the cast, including McLean and the writers.
He said, "Look, we got one more scene to do." And, oh, okay. So they handed out 6 pieces of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the scene, and the only guy that had lines was Gary Burgo. And I'm telling you that in mass, the 6 of us just looked at Larry Gelbart and said, "Why?"
Mm-hmm.
And Larry said, "Well, I'm going to give you as many reasons as I can that make sense, and any one of them you pick up on, you can take it. 1, it lends credibility to the show, the futility of war. 2, we think it'll cause tremendous publicity for the show. And 3, the network wants us to because they don't want you to go out and do another series with this character."
Mm.
Or 4, none of the above, so take your choice. But we're going to do it. We did it. What was to have been a cast party at the end of the season and a goodbye party for me, we all went to our dressing rooms. I think everybody, like I did, just sat and cried for about a half hour. We all got in our cars and went home. We've been great friends.
To be essentially a goodbye episode in which people shared their feelings. No big tension, no big storyline. And we said we wanted him to die at the end. And but we swore them to secrecy. Everybody, the only people who knew about it were Burt Metcalf, Gene, and I, and the writers. And when they brought the episode in, we detached that page and did not distribute it. And we rehearsed the episode. We shot the episode. I did something. I directed it, as it turned out. It was my turn in the box. And I did the one sort of directorial touch I've ever done in my life that no one ever notices, but was just a kind of a pleasure for me to do. Whenever Henry was seen in his office, there was always the skeleton behind him, as though it foretold what might happen to the character without tipping it, without giving it away. The reason we kept it a secret was our primary reason was to keep the actors from being influenced by that information.
However, it was a bold decision that helped the show hit its themes perfectly, and it showed that to the audience that war wasn't nice, it's a horrible, disgusting thing, in which you never know when you're going to die, and showed even the main characters weren't safe from death. His death added to MASH as a show, and its anti-war stance. It has impacted TV today, as nowadays a main character dying isn't really a rogue or dangerous idea. Some shows even have them die in the first season. However, this, whilst not the first, it was a pivotal moment in TV history, and had the characters die in such a horrible way, it allowed for the idea to be acceptable in other shows. For example, in Seinfeld, the death of Susan, which might not have been able to happen had had Henry's death not taken place.
She's dead. Yes. Huh.
Overall, a pivotal moment in not just sitcom or medical drama, but TV as a medium, and allowed writers for more creative freedom when writing, and added to the fantastic show that is MASH, still holds up to this day.
Hey guys, I'm okay. I'm okay.